Hey, well, welcome to week 4 of our Emerge Brighter series. And listen, if you actually appreciate this and you appreciate being able to either recap or even just watch this as an alternative to watching the whole thing, please just send me a quick email. I would love to know it's actually helpful. Because if I don't know it's helpful, I won't continue doing it. But if I do know it's helpful, then I will want to do that so it can help you and strengthen you. Okay. So, if you haven't watched Richard's film, please, you really need to do so. You need to go back to Sunday and you need to go to about 25 minutes, 40 seconds in and watch it because it is truly amazing. It is more inspiring than anything I could possibly say to you. It really is. Now, when I preached this message, when I first preached the message of Lazarus coming out of the tomb in week 1, live at the Jubilee Centre, Richard came running up to me and he was just like, that is me, that is my story. I was dead, I was in the tomb, I've come out and now it's time to take off the grave clothes. And so this week we're focusing on what it means to take off the grave clothes. And hey, we recognise that this is a lifelong journey for all of us, but specifically we're talking about what are the COVID grave clothes that we need to take off so that we might emerge brighter. The Bible text tells us in verse 44, and this is from New King James Version because I kind of like the way they put it. And he who had died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. And Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. So we don't exactly know how Lazarus would have been bound. He'd have probably been bound up pretty much. So he might have even shuffled out of the grave, hopped out of the grave, who knows, but he probably wouldn't have run out of the grave. But what we do know is that he needed some help. You know, Jesus called on the people to loose him, to unbind him, to untie him. Different translations use different words, but effectively he needs some help. You need to help him to get going. And one of the things that I love about this miracle is the fact that Jesus, he could have done it all. He could have not only raised him from the dead, but also caused the grave clothes to fall off, because let's face it, that's an easier miracle than raising someone from the dead. But he didn't. He left something for the people of God to do. And this was the first prophetic act of the church. Basically, well, maybe not the first, but one of the first. Basically, kind of, I'll do what I can do, Jesus says, but there are some things that you can do to help people, and you need to do that. And church, we need to take off our grave clothes so that we are there for the next Richard who comes along and needs us to help him to take his grave clothes off. And so in light of emerging brighter and coming out of the pandemic, really, I just ask you, church family, to spend some time before God and say, what are the COVID grave clothes that I've put on? We have all put on new habits. We have all put on new ways of thinking. There are all things that we have done totally differently this year that we need to actually take off so that we can enter into all that God has for us as individuals, but also for the world around us as well. I talked about just 2 on Sunday morning. I've talked firstly about how we have become very me-centric. Me, myself and I, me, my wife and I, me, my family and I, but very much about me. That's understandable. We've been made to stay at home by the government, and rightly so. And effectively, the only people we're cooking dinner for is us. The only people we're hanging out with is us. The only people we're really thinking about that much is us, maybe a few others, but mostly it's just me. And if we stay there, then, oh man, the devil has won. The enemy of Jesus has won if we stay in our tombs, if we stay wrapped up in our self-sufficiency and just being about me. And so we have to take that off. We need to share our lives, we need to share our homes, we need to share our families, share our hospitality. That is the life we've been called to. Love your neighbour as yourself. Let's not stay in the isolation that has been imposed on us, the social isolation. And the second thing was there are a lot of coping mechanisms we need to leave behind. What new little things have you picked up over the year? Has it been food? Has it been alcohol? Has it been Netflix? Well, I'll tell you one of them is probably the kind of the coping mechanism of predictability and routine. You've got into a new routine to help you cope with the trauma of COVID, and that's fine. It's right and normal and human to turn to routine and predictability to cope with trauma, but we can't stay there. We have not been called out of our tomb just to live life in a rut. God has a better bigger life for us, and he needs us to live it, that it isn't monotonous, isn't predictable, but is being led by his Spirit. So, what are the COVID grave clothes that you need to take off? One final passage of scripture to end, Ephesians 4:22. See if you can see where I changed it. You were taught with regard to your COVID way of life to put off your old COVID self, which has been corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new post-COVID self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. I hope you found this a good catch-up. I hope if you thought it was alright, you go back and watch the real thing, especially because I got dressed up in toilet paper, for crying out loud. And if you enjoyed it, drop me an email. I'd love to know that you found it helpful. God bless.